Money as an energy is very responsive to our energy. If you like, there are laws around the way money works as an energy, and it cannot supply to you anything that you haven't requested or asked for. So if your energy constantly tells the story, I can't afford my rent, money's a kind of responsive energy. It actually has to supply you with that. It's really weird. We used to have the story of the genie in the bottle, and the genie would say, what do you want? And you'd say what you want, and then magically you would get it. At a certain kind of level, money actually really works like that. But the problem is it supplies you with exactly what you say.
Sarah McCrum is an entrepreneur, teacher, and author of the book, Love Money, Money Loves You. In 2010, Sarah found herself spontaneously connecting with the energy of money and began to transcribe the information into eventually what became her book. According to the information she received and her subsequent lived experience, the way money works is actually very, very different than the narrative that many of us have been told. Concepts like money is unlimited, it comes when we focus on enjoyment, and the true purpose of money is to facilitate expansive exchange, cause us to examine our own beliefs and to bring into question everything that we thought about money to be true. Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, and I'm really happy to be here.
Sarah, I am thrilled to have you here because, man, my relationship with money has been a roller coaster, especially since I got interested in the world of consciousness. And when I heard your story, I was very fascinated. One, because a big part of my background has been heavily influenced by Taoism. And two, many of the ideas were quite quite unique and different than the narrative that we've been told. And so maybe where we can ground this conversation is learning a little bit more about your background, and maybe we could start with the many years you spent studying with um, masters in China. That sounds like an interesting place to start to me.
Yes, I better turn it around and say Chinese masters. They weren't in China. I have been to China with a Chinese master,
I
but most
see.
of my studying was in Europe and in New Zealand. But yes, so when I was about 31, I was introduced to my first Chinese master in London, in the UK, and I spent 7 years studying Qigong with him, which was the most incredible experience for me because it was the first time in my life that I felt that my inner philosophy, if you like, or some sense of inner understanding of life felt at home for me. It was very, very familiar. He used to talk for an hour or two about energy. Everything was about energy, the energy of life, chi, the life force, however you want to call it. And I just loved it. I loved listening to it. And I went on and studied for another 15 years with another Chinese master, where we really were just learning how to use energy, or how to understand that energy is the foundation of life. It's what everything is made of. And therefore, the energy of your relationships, the energy of your health, the energy of your business, the energy of your community, these are the important things to look at. And when you look at the energy, you can solve problems that you can't solve when you only look at the material part of things. I think that's really what's important about it, especially in a business context. If you only look at the money and the people and all the things you can see, you miss the dynamics that are flowing through the business that are making everything happen.
And at what point in your journey did this, I guess you would call it a message, come from the energy of money? Can you talk about when that connection came and what that looked like?
Yes, I was well into my time with Chinese masters. Probably I'd already done about 20 years. And we'd learned a lot about business and money. But somehow we always applied it in a way that doesn't actually work. It was a huge lesson for me because after learning a lot about money, or a lot about business. I was completely broke, and something wasn't working. And in the end, I had a business failure. I had a business in London, which was a big energy center, actually, right near the city of London, where all the financial people live. It was originally called the Energy Bank, which is quite funny, because we were playing with all these banking words, but supplying energy to bankers. And that business failed in the recession, as we lost all our clients pretty much overnight and had just a very painful, slow experience of dying. And very shortly after that, I guess because I was really curious at some level, I found myself, I was journaling, and I was reading a little book that said, "What would money like to say to you?" So I just kind of like, well, I didn't think money would like to say anything to me. I never thought that money would talk. I started writing, and I literally wrote a message that flowed out of my pen, was not my message. And it was like money, or what I came to understand was the energy of money, was talking to me. And the very first thing it said to me was, "I would like to tell you to love me." I was like, "What?" That was so surprising. And it wasn't clearly talking about love, like just get as much of me as you can and then hoard it in your bank account or something. It was really talking about, I would like you to love me. That's the starting point for relating with me. And then it said, "I'm an energy. I'm very powerful and beautiful." It's like, what? Really? It was such a surprise. And I wrote for about two
Not
pages.
the traditional narrative we're told.
Not at all. And it said, "I am not the devil and I never have been." And so all these things that I had not really questioned. I wasn't terribly interested in money, actually. Although I was running a business, I was not at all driven by money. And so I'd rather ignored it. And it was totally shocking and surprising and beautiful at the same time. It opened my heart, and it got me interested in seeing what money really is. And then what happened is that I started writing every day, and money just revealed more and more of itself, its true nature, we can say, through these little writings that became the chapters of my book.
Wow, that's amazing. And how has your perception on what the purpose of money shifted since this encounter?
Well, when I grew up, we were not supposed to talk about money. In British middle class families, it was one of the taboo subjects. And really, when I was young, it's quite shocking to think of that now. But for example, people being entrepreneurial and making money this generation was considered to be quite vulgar. That was the word that was used. Is very dated now, but I really remember that. So I think that I grew up ignoring it because this very idea that you would be interested in money was so frowned upon. And it's quite interesting that I tried for quite a few years to do business really without thinking about money as much as I possibly could, because it was such a denial inside me. What I realized through writing the book is that the purpose of money, if you like, it is the energy of exchange. It's the energy that enables us to contribute to each other in a social community, in any kind of community in the world, can be a global community or a local community. So it's kind of the fuel of our creativity, and it connects us together in all these lines of energy. That's how I see it. Like, it connects us together through our desire ultimately to contribute to making the world a better place. Really and truly, why do we work? Why do we make business? We do it to make the world better. Sometimes in a more selfish way, we're trying to feed our family and make ourselves have more or feel more valid in the world. Sometimes we have a more expanded purpose where we want to create a shift in the world, or we want to provide people with something that is genuinely beneficial for them. But these are all our ways of making the world better. And money is kind of like this beautiful energy that connects all those pieces together and enables them to flow with each other. So it's really a very remarkable thing.
Can you talk a little bit about, because this has really kind of shifted my perception. Not that I've been one of these people, I've basically been a capitalist in my professional life, but I know a lot of people that go on the spiritual path think that money is the root of so much challenges in this world and struggle, and feuding and fighting and greed and all that, you know, how would you respond to that, knowing what you know now?
First of all, it's really important to understand that it's not the money itself that causes the problem. It's our relationship with money, and therefore it's actually our understanding about money that causes the problem. And let's just take it back to relationship for a moment. There's also an equal amount of hell really created through relationships. People can hate each other, they can fight each other, they can hurt each other, both at the individual level in a regular family and at the international level between nations. So we see the same patterns playing out in relationships as we do in money. And I think it's important to recognize that and to recognize that there's something in our understanding of money that creates the conditions where terrible things are done in its name. And we have to admit that. We see that all the time. If you understand that that money is actually an energy of love, and that's a bit of a bold statement in a way. But if you understand that somehow underneath life is this energy of love, and I cannot understand it any other way now. The more I look at it, it's the only thing that I can see. It's only love could produce the incredible beauty and complexity of our world. It couldn't be produced by some kind of, it wouldn't be produced by a machine. It wouldn't be produced by jealousy or envy or any of these kinds of things, but love creates beauty, and that's fundamentally what we live in a beautiful world. And so when I started to see, as my book showed me over and over again, that money is an energy of love, and that it is a way, our contribution is a way we express our love of life in the world, and that changes your understanding and resolves the conflict that exists inside all of us. So the capitalists, in quotes, I mean, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a capitalist. It's just, how do we understand money? But the capitalists and the purpose centered or the consciousness types who are really looking at the meaning of life, the conflict arises if you think that money is material and material is somehow bad, and then spiritual and spirit is somehow good and virtuous. And therefore, good people avoid money. And this is both Western and Eastern. If you think about it, the monks who go around with their begging bowls, like, we don't touch money, money is evil. And the Christians who believe in poverty, basically, they make it look very, very risky to be rich, because you're not going to get into heaven that way. It's very clear. And so we get this conflict inside ourselves because you you have to make money in this world, even to look after your family, which is your primary responsibility, really, and very creative activity. You can't do that without money. So you either go the money way and say, oh, I'm just going to shovel the guilt somewhere, or you go the purpose way and you get in complete denial of money and you're broke usually. And that doesn't work. So I feel it's essential that we unite the material and the spiritual, that consciousness is like the application of wisdom, if you like, to make decisions that affect the material world. And then we can unite, we can bring these two together, and we can have a peaceful relationship with money. Then we can do good business, we can be conscious, we can explore the meaning of life, and it all comes together into one story.
It seems like a lot of these polarities that you mentioned exist mainly due to our ignorance around what money in exchange really is about. Can you talk about some of the common misconceptions around the energy of money? And maybe even just to start, like, I think it is interesting to make the distinction of the energy of money and then money as in cash as we commonly conceive it.
Yes, when we think of money, we'll tend to think of cash, we'll think of numbers in our bank accounts, we'll think of transactions and contracts and all those kinds of things. And then, of course, there's all the movements of money around the world, capital. It expands to very big concepts. The way that I see that is that is our best interpretation to date of this energy. So we experience energy. I can say we're energetic beings. And look, some people might not really understand what I mean by that, but we're alive. A human body is animated by something. And we call that energy. We can call that the life force. The Chinese call it qi. And so we're alive, And therefore, there's energy in everything. So if we understand that cash and all the representations of money are the best that we've done so far, but they're not a full representation of what's possible with this energy, we can then start to see the misconceptions. So we count numbers for money, we count our wealth, and we've actually made it a very personal thing. We make it all about my wealth. But actually, you can't create wealth without other people. And everyone in business knows that, actually, because you can't do anything without other people. So one of the misconceptions that I think is really interesting is the way we always count our personal wealth, but we can only create that wealth in some kind of community with other people. And if we understand that, we treat people in a different way, and we look at the exchanges that we make differently than if we think it's all about my accumulation of my wealth and the wealth of my business or my family. So that's one thing that changes. I think another common misconception is that money is limited, and therefore, this is a really silly one, which we can see through immediately, but we don't a lot of the time. If I pass some money to you because I'm buying something, we often feel as if we're losing it. It's like, oh, well, I've lost some money. And so we feel, well, I've got less. Yes, the numbers on your bank account go down. And of course, if you think really big assets, the assets go up on your balance sheet. But most of the time, we don't really think like that. We just think, I'm losing something. And so we live in this constant world of scarcity, like going up and down, up and down. But when you understand that, what it says in my book all the time is that money is unlimited. And therefore, the stories we tell about scarcity are not true. And when you start to understand that there's no limit to our creativity, which is our ability to contribute to each other, which is what makes the flow of money flow, then you realize that it's really true that money is not limited, and that you always have more access to creativity. There is always money that can flow. And then you stop being stressed about it and stop worrying about it and stop making it, this constant tracking of the ups and downs of it and feeling like you're losing something all the time and you've got to gain something, and you start to look at it in a much more creative way. And I think that's a big change, but I think it's an important change because we start to realize that there's a kind of wealth that we create in our lives, and money is a part of that. Money enables that. But it makes us much more creative and much less machine-like in the way we go about money and business.
I think, there's a lot of people that are probably listening going, okay, money is unlimited. Sounds great, but I don't have more money than paying my rent next month. And so it certainly doesn't feel unlimited. How can we think about the ways in which we can start to understand why we're not in that unlimited state and begin to move towards it?
Money as an energy is very responsive to our energy. And if you like, there are laws around the way money works as an energy, and it cannot supply to you anything that you haven't requested or asked for. So if your energy constantly tells the story, I can't afford my rent, money's a kind of responsive energy. It actually has to supply you with that. It's really weird. We used to have the story of the genie in the bottle, and the genie would say, what do you want? And you'd say what you want, and then magically you would get it. At a certain kind of level, money actually really works like that. But the problem is it supplies you with exactly what you say. So if you say, I never have enough money to pay all my bills, literally, it's kind of like the universe or life has to supply you with that experience. That's the law of life. And so when we see like, oh, help, I don't have enough money to pay my bills, we start to tell that story over and over again. I don't have enough money to pay my bills. And any good entrepreneur knows that that's not a helpful thing to do. What you need to do is to get into the mode of, okay, how can I create more money?
I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. If you like what you hear, let me know by clicking like, subscribing to the channel, and responding with a comment around something that you found interesting in the conversation so far. In addition to these videos, I do a lot of writing on the exploration of consciousness, and my own personal revelations in my newsletter called Consciousness, the Doorway to Human Evolution. To receive these updates and more, all you need to do is simply head to the link in the description below, and you'll be added to the community of 20,000 plus consciousness explorers receiving weekly ideas and inspiration in their inbox. I look forward to hearing from you there. Now let's get back to the show.
Because then I'll be able to pay my bills. And it's a little shift that is a huge shift. Immediately shifts us into creativity, which is a good example of what I was talking about before. So we need to understand the power of our stories, the words we tell to ourselves and to others. If you constantly say, I'm not good enough to earn lots of money or to be really successful, you will automatically limit your business. If you say, I'm never going to be able to afford the house that I'd love to live in, you're setting that up as an experience for yourself. And so our words and our thoughts and our feelings really do have power. They don't have total power. There are big things that happen as well. Life moves us around. We don't completely control life. But I think it's really important to understand that that's how money works. It's very responsive to your energy, and your energy is constantly telling a story to money.
I think there's probably a lot of people who are listening who, and I can speak from my own experience, certainly, where they perhaps were very material focused. They got in touch with some type of spiritual concept, inner transformation, and all of a sudden they said, hey, wait a second, I actually need to work on the inner abundance. And all these things are telling me to not have desires and attachments. And boy, it sounds like asking for things and money is actually going to serve as an impediment to greater levels of self realization and transformation. I can see that being just a huge conflict for so many people who are interested in spirituality, but also want to have a prosperous life.
Yeah. It, I mean, honestly, I just think that a lot of those stories that we're told are not true. And I experienced it, that's why I can say that. I experienced what so many people experience on a spiritual path, is that you end up with nothing. And that I was lucky, just lucky, that my teacher had somehow taught us that we were supposed to be very wealthy. So I took it at one level as a personal failure. And that was really painful. Like, what have I done wrong that I've been taught all of this about energy? I'm supposed to be really successful with all this energy and it's not working. I'm completely broke. I mean, I had $200 a month. And that was it. It was really bad. I had food and a place to live, but that doesn't hang together. So I've tested that story over a long period of time, and I can tell you that it doesn't work. And I've seen people who've devoted their life. I've seen wealthy people who've given away all their wealth thinking, if I'm generous, life will be generous to me. And they end up without any money and they don't understand what's happened. I've seen people really significant in the spirituality industry who believed all the things they were told and they didn't work. And we can say, okay, there must be something wrong with you. That's what I did. There must be something wrong with me. But actually, maybe that's the reason why I ended up writing the book, because what I have found for myself is that, yes, I am a spiritual person, deeply spiritual person. Those things, let's say abundance, because we're talking about money here. Abundance is something that the soul, the spiritual part of us, longs to experience here. It delights in experiencing abundance. And we're all attracted to abundance, just like we are to joy and peace and love and freedom. These are things that attract the spirit of a human being. And that's universal across the planet. And so if our understanding of money means, well, you can't have abundance, you actually cut off your soul. You cut off your spiritual connection in the very act of splitting those two things in half. And that just doesn't make sense. So what I found is we need to experience abundance here. We need inner and outer abundance. And that doesn't mean you have to be super rich. And it doesn't mean you have to be it's your choice. What level of physical abundance will suit your life and your destiny and your, all the choices you've made at many stages of your life journey. There's a lot of freedom in that. But to say I want to experience abundance, but I can't have anything, doesn't make sense. You're here in a body on a planet, with a very material reality. And the only way that I found to make life work is to bring these things together, unite the spiritual and the material. It doesn't work either other way.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the more I go down this path, it's never, the answer is never either or. It always is both and. And it's just always comes back to that. And I think this is a great example. And some of the things that I garnered from the book are that it seems like some connection with love, either internally, externally, or both, seems like kind of a requisite to or foundation for money to start to flow more easily into our experience.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And really, if you could have a relationship with money that is based on love, so there's no rejection and there's also no greed. Love doesn't really hold greed. It doesn't hold that fear of loss. Real love holds a spaciousness. We can lose. Yeah, we do lose. We can lose money as we can lose partnerships, relationships, all of that. But if you can hold that spaciousness of love, you can actually always find that there's something good happening even in a loss. And you engage your creativity again, and you make new decisions and you do new things, and you're taken to new places in your life that you would never have gone to. So yes, I feel that was the biggest learning from the book, is that the underpinning of this so-called root of all evil is actually love. If money is love, clearly everything is love, really. It enables us to embrace love even in the very dark parts of humanity, and it softens, I think it starts to soften our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with life, and it makes us into a better person.
So, if I was to work on how I relate to money, is that something that I should work on directly, or should I work on the love component, self love, loving others, just experiencing love, maybe both at the same time? How would you advise? What are the teachings advise on that?
The first thing I would do is take the word work out of it. It's not really more work to do this, and if you make it more work, it tends to get rather hard because you bring your head to it a lot. Love is not a head thing. You can't love your children or your wife or your husband or whoever with your head. It just doesn't work. You have to actually open your heart. It takes all of you to love. So if we work at things really hard, we tend to get into our head and that messes it up. So I would take that out right away. It's really important to relax about money. So learn to actually relax. And I think that the starting point is to gain a new understanding of money. Like you're doing, you're reading this book. It's not really my book, it's money's book. These are literally the words that flowed through my pen, so it's coming very direct. When you start to understand money differently, that will push you in the direction of, well, I need to love myself more, because if I don't love myself, or if I think I'm unworthy or not deserving, that's affecting my relationship with money. It's just not going to work. So it shows you where you need to grow yourself. If you have a new understanding, it's impossible, I would say, to change your relationship with money if you have the same old understanding of money that you had before. Like, how are you going to change your relationship with the devil? You don't even want to have a relationship with the devil. So we've got to actually change our understanding of what it is. And then we start to relax. We bring love into it. We bring enjoyment into our relationship with money. It always says this is about enjoyment. We learn how to work. I talk about working light, not working hard. We learn how to work light because it's really obvious that working hard gets in the way. And so it starts to shift the way we live and make decisions because we have a different understanding of what it is.
Yeah, it's very interesting to read about the book. and the ways that it advises us to work that are quite different than the narrative that we have been told. I know myself, coming from the world of high tech entrepreneurship, a lot of the narrative was around grit and pushing yourself and working long days and long hours and doing whatever it takes. And it seems like that actually can be quite an impediment or unnecessary experience based on what I've read.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. If you look at the people who've lived that life into their 50s and 60s, you can look at the results, and many people burn out, and many people are exhausted, or they're disappointed because life somehow didn't fulfill its promise to them. And there are people like, look, I think grit is really important, but it's the way it's interpreted. Like, to be a conscious human being, for me, consciousness about choices. Okay. If you're unconscious, you can't make decisions. If you're conscious, you can make decisions. And so for me, to be a conscious human being means that I put energy into making wise decisions. And that takes grit. It takes grit every single day to kind of choose a path of wisdom rather than just to go with what everybody else is doing. It takes grit to figure out, how am I going to market and promote this product rather than try to follow somebody else's formula that usually ends up not working for me. That's the kind of grit, like the grit of consciousness is the grit of cultivating your own wisdom and your own capacity as a human being. And that is really important. But the grit of proving that you're still in the office at 11 p.m., so that what? That, I mean, I've done it and I don't regret having done it, because I think it was really important for me to learn how much energy I had, that I could do that. I could work till 11 p.m. I could do things through the night. I could meet a deadline. Those are important skills. But to make that your lifestyle is making one thing everything. If you need to be able to do that, you need equally to be able to relax. You need to be able to wander around and be very kind of spacious and enjoy things. And you don't want to just do that either. If you're enjoying and just being very kind of spacious and in the flow all the time, you start to want a bit more grit. Actually, you start to want to achieve something. You put pressure on yourself. So again, it's not an either or, it's a both and. And I think that the book and this focus on love and money and this material and spiritual pushes us to find ourselves, and it pushes us to do the real, it's not work, like the contribution of being a human being, the contribution of being you and being really you. Like, you're here. What are you doing here? Why are you here? You're here to be human and to live and to love and to enjoy and to create and to do crazy things and make huge mistakes and regret them and then go and do something different. You're here for all of it. It frees us, I feel, to have a much richer life.
I agree. Something that recently came very alive for me was there was a period of my own journey where I was very focused on becoming enlightened. And I didn't want to get back on the wheel of karma and kind of lots of the things that you are told. And I had a very interesting Akashic reading actually after a podcast that I did with one of the guests. And the message was like, dude, you are human. Like, you're here to have this experience. Like, you need to like really start to embrace living fully into the humanhood instead of trying to, you know, surpass it. Like, time to just enjoy the shit out of it. And that was an incredibly liberating message. It was just like, huh, wow, I needed to hear that. And there's just so much freedom and energy that came on the heels of that. And so I completely
Yes.
relate to what you're saying.
I actually, just yesterday I was talking with somebody who grew up in the transcendental meditation movement, so to speak, and he knew Maharishi, who was an Indian teacher who came to the West and probably introduced meditation to the West, or was one of the very instrumental people. And Maharishi himself, who taught all these people meditation, talked about how people who meditated all the time were turning into enlightened cabbages, like just completely dysfunctional human beings. And that was never the point.
That's amazing. I never heard enlightened cabbage before. I love that phrase. So, on a more personal level for you, so you were struggling financially. I remember hearing a story about not being able to buy a plane ticket, and you came across this wisdom, you began to implement it in your life. I mean, how have things unfolded in your own experiments?
I mean, it's a big story in a way because there are so many nuances. The first thing that I did, I left my Chinese master and moved to Australia, and I really started completely from scratch. And that's when I started to engage with my book and the messages in it, because I was regularly in the place where it's like, how on earth am I going to pay the rent this week? I had nothing to fall back on at all. And time again, I had to go back to this relationship with this intangible energy called money and say, please, just sort this out for me. I didn't know anyone in Australia. I was starting a business with no relationships, with no nothing. And it worked. The thing is, it worked. And sometimes I would just literally sit there and ask money to help me because I didn't know what to do. And I always paid the rent. It took me a while. I can't say that I paid the rent, bought the food, I did the basics. I didn't find instant luxury in my life. I had to learn like every step, I think, very thoroughly. And then I reached a point some years later where, I made enough money, I bought a farm. So, at that level of some personal wealth and being able to invest in something, I did that. But a little bit before that, I met somebody who became my business partner, and we started to create this new, really, it's almost like a new concept of business. We were looking at the fact that the most important things in life today are not valued in our economy. So, for example, we value dead trees, but living trees have not been valued. So we cut them down because then we can sell them. We don't value living ecosystems. We don't value the care and the love that traditionally, but not always, women bring. And, some of the most important work that gets done in early childhood, for example, is taken for granted by our society. And we have here locally where I live, single mothers living in vans because they don't have enough money to have a home. There's something really wrong with that. And so we said, okay, we want to address that. We want to address how can we value the things that are essential for life: nature, fresh air, clean water, healthy soil, healthy food, biodiversity, all of those things, and then moving on to human well-being. And so we kind of reinvented value, let's say, and we started a group of companies which is called Love To. It's about people doing what they love to do. And so it very much connects with this energy of money. And it is actually a way of shifting the direction that money flows, the direction that capital flows, so that capital can flow into the activities that are essential for life. So people who take care of nature in farming, we have created a system whereby people who do regenerative farming, which is a farming that is beneficial to nature and aligned with nature, will eventually be rewarded more highly than people who do farming that damages nature. And that shifts the farming industry into an industry that is aligned with nature. That's what we need. It's really simple. If money goes there and knowledge and experience, we will shift the way that we do things, because money is a really fundamental way that we express value. If we don't value the important things in our economy, we don't pay for them, they will never be well funded and they will never grow in the way that they could. So we've invented a way of doing business that is just different.
That's exciting. I mean, I think a lot of people, that's kind of what makes them upset about money, is that they feel like it's feeding a machine that isn't supportive of our world and environment.
Exactly. And look, the interesting thing about that story is it's been 7 years in the making. We're now launching. We did a pilot launch earlier this year. And so interestingly, I didn't get wealthier and wealthier and make more and more money because I started pouring every bit of spare money I had from my other business, which is a teaching and coaching business, into this new business. So I can't say, right, I'm sitting on my farm now, so I'm very wealthy in a way, and we have our own food and all kinds of things. And at the same time, I don't have masses of money in my bank accounts because you decide what you do with your money. And I invested in this new system of business which will make a lot of money. So I really want to say that, because people often think, well, if I change my relationship with money, it's just going to go up like this from there. It could, if that's what you decide. But I made a different decision. And sometimes it's been a really painful decision, because sometimes it's like, oh, help, I've overdone it here. I don't have enough money, and I have to get all that entrepreneurial creativity out and think, what can I sell now so that I can make some more money? I just need some cash. But that's part of the journey. But ultimately, what we're doing is creating a business that solves that problem for lots of people who are doing good in the world. And I think that that's worth the pain that I've experienced along the way.
That's beautiful. I think it touches upon kind of one of the laws of life, if you will, which basically says that if you are making money, you have to use it. It seems like it's all about flow and fluidity, or else it stops the flow. And so this idea of just making more money and hoarding it is actually kind of not in alignment with the way that things work, at least based on my interpretation.
Yes, and actually, it's such a common image that we have of people hoarding it. But if we're really honest, the people who accumulate wealth, their money's actually always working. It might be working. It's usually working for maybe working for other companies. Maybe it's buying real estate. It's working always. Money always moves, unless you put it under your mattress. If you put it in a jar or under your mattress, you really stop it. But then the question comes, so what is it working on? And I think this is where there's so much pain in so many people. I know people who've been working in impact investment for their whole life and still haven't been able to shift the majority of their wealth into something that they really believe in, because the conscious entrepreneurs have not yet made successful enough businesses for that to happen. So there's a huge challenge on those of us who are wanting to shift the way we do things on this planet and to take care of nature and people and all of that. There's a huge responsibility for us to make very successful businesses that people can invest in, and not take the path of, oh, I'll just be very modest, you know, slow returns and don't expect any returns, this kind of thing. Like, why not? Let's do something that really works for investors and really works for the business, so that we get that kind of shift. So yeah, it's a changing world.
What role does imagination have in being in the flow of money?
That's probably a much bigger question than you realize that you're asking, at least from my personal experience.
Well, it's very interesting because I've really been captivated by this idea that we lose our sense of imagination as adults. We stop letting our minds just go wild and be the architects. And as I've kind of gotten in touch with intuition and lots of these capacities that I did not really understand or think were possible for a human, in my inner experience, I kept having this draw towards imagination. And you just start to like almost build your imagination muscles back. And then I was discovering your book, and it's talking about dreaming big and sitting for an hour a day imagining. And I'm like, okay, this is a crazy synchronicity. There's a lot here. And yeah, it sounds like a loaded question, but maybe just would love a primer on how it relates to everything that we've been talking about.
This is going to be another both and answer. So, yes, if your imagination has been somehow suppressed by the way that you have had to work, it's extraordinarily important, actually, I think, for all of us to open up our imagination of what's possible for me as a human being living on this planet. And in my community, the communities that I connect with, what's possible? And what would I love to experience? What would I love to create? What would I love to contribute with my life? Just open that up. The thing that is risky and may not be so much of a risk for you because you come from an entrepreneurial background is that in the more of the spiritual world, people will spend their whole life in their imagination. And this is what happened to me before, and never make anything. So if you're going to imagine, then make it. Okay? Be the creator that you are, and make sure creativity is not imagination. Imagination is a component of creativity and it opens up the possibilities. But to be creative, you need to actually create. So make things happen. Play with your imagination for real, like children do. But children make castles. As adults, we can make real castles. We make businesses, we make families, we make experiences. So play with it all the way and don't just keep it in the imagination. And that's where it becomes money as well. That's where money comes in, because the minute you want to make something, you will have to engage with money.
It also seems like, if the universe is a giant yes machine to what we're asking for, we have to have that big vision. We have to first think about, like, or imagine, what it is we want to create in the world. And then it almost is like the universe, source, life itself, whatever you want to call it, supports us. But we have to have the vision first.
Yeah. In a way, I think a really simple way to say it is we have to be able to imagine a world that's better. If you can imagine a world that's better, then you start to look at, okay, how do I contribute to that? And that draws out the natural creativity of a human being, of any system. If I can imagine a world that's better, of course I want that. I don't want worse, I want better. And it draws your energy towards it. And then you find your place, your stream in that, where you can contribute, and then you connect with other people who are doing other pieces of it. And the world actually gets better. And that is fulfillment. It's not just seeing it get better, it's being on that path, because you already know better in your imagination. So you're already experiencing better as you create it. So you experience fulfillment on the way, not only when the results come.
Beautiful. I love it. So, everyone, after listening to this, go home, imagine the amazing world you want to create, and good things will happen. I want to finish with a final question, because I know a lot of people will listen to this and a little voice inside their head will go, yeah, but what about all those rich assholes out there? What about all those people that are super stressed and unhappy and living an unfulfilled life, yet they're rich? Like, how do we make sense of that based on some of the ideas and principles that we were talking about today?
So the first thing is you can look at them and just get one thing clear in your mind. Do you want to be a rich asshole? Probably not. So that's really clear. You don't want to be rich and unhappy. You don't want to be greedy and stressed. So what's your definition of rich? That's the first thing. But the other thing that I've come to recognize, especially around, where very wealthy people are maybe pulling strings and manipulating and really orchestrating things on our planet at times, and there's a tremendous resistance to that. What I've come to understand is that people who are very powerful through wealth, but who are doing things that are are harmful to other human beings, that are detrimental to our well-being, they do not know what money is. They have their own definition and they have become masters in that understanding of money that they had. And money can be used to control, but it can never be used, it can never go all the way, because people like you and me can talk about this and say, well, hold on a moment, money's something different. But what I know is they don't know money as an energy of love. And I know that to know it as an energy of love is a better place to be than to have all the power in the world and all the money in the world. And therefore, I think this will grow its attraction, and being ultra controlling and ultra afraid of other people taking your power away will become less and less attractive on this planet. And I think that that's a better world. So that's my vision.
I agree. And I do think that is a compelling vision. Well, Sarah, this has been a very fun conversation. I could probably talk to you for hours more about this type of stuff, but perhaps we'll have to do it on a future episode. For people that want to learn more about your work, your book, love to, where are the best places for them to follow you online?
The best place is to go to my website, which is the same as my name. So it's sarahmccrum.com. and everything else you can find there.
Awesome. Well, I will link to those resources in the show notes. So don't worry about memorizing it. Just head to the show notes. And thanks again, Sarah. This was an absolute blast. And thank you to everybody for listening. We're grateful for you.
Thank you.